Y'all can see my screen, thumbs up. All right, cool, good morning. So today we're spending the whole day on one protocol in particular, and that's the HTTP protocol. For the most part, when I say HTTP, I'm talking HTTPS as well. The major difference between them is you've got that encryption layer functioning in between. So HTTP is huge. It's one of the most common protocols. When we start doing red team, it's going to generally be like a flashing light or jingling keys that are just like, ooh, that's exciting. I want to go, attack web servers because, web's pretty ubiquitous. It's super popular. It's what you think of when you think of the internet. You're generally thinking about websites, and websites are all HTTP servers. So there's a whole lot that, there's a whole reason we're spending a lot of time on HTTP. Okay. So what are we talking about for this morning? We're going to do a little quick review on what HTTP is. There were some things I told you guys on Friday that I'm going to ask you guys to recall. We're going to talk about the request and response structure of HTTP requests. What does it look like? What's the whole pattern generally look like? We'll talk about different types of requests. And we'll talk about the different ways that servers can respond to us, and specifically talk about the response codes that they have. So before I go on to the next slide, what are the things that we already know about HTTP? Give me that brain dump of what do you know about HTTP?
Port 80.
Port 80. Yes, love it. What else, what's the port for HTTPS?
443.
Awesome, right? 8443, those should be in your brain as the default web servers. They usually live there. What else do you know about HTTP?
It's an application level server.
Heck yeah. What layer is that?
7.
Yep. And what do we call the participants of HTTP? There's two names.
Clients and servers.
Clients and servers, and yeah, that's pretty much all we touched on, right? It lives generally on port 80 and 443. It's an application layer protocol. It sits above TCP/IP, right? So that's why we have a port and an IP address there. Generally, we're sending text back and forth over, and we have clients and servers. Awesome. So there's really two more key things about HTTP we're going to be touching on today. Okay. So first big thing about HTTP is that every request gets only, in total, no matter what, one response. One response, one request, one response. All right, always, forever. HTTP, that's just the language that's just how that protocol works. So, I'm not going to go into much how this affects web development because it's not important for us right now. Well, what is important is, when I make one HTTP request, I can only, at most, get one HTTP response, right? I can't send a request to the server and get two HTTP responses. No dice, doesn't work that way. Okay. The other things I want to show you about HTTP is there's verbs. So when I make a request, there are different kinds of requests I can make. The most common ones, the ones that I need you to know, are get, post, put, and delete. There are more, right? HTTP is a whole protocol, and there's different words that are in this protocol, different verbs in it. But these four are the most common ones, and they map to all of the common things. If you think about pretty much every application out there, they pretty much do these four things of read, create, update, and delete, or CRUD, create, read, update, and delete. And same idea for HTTP. Generally, when you're doing stuff on the web, these are the four things you're going to do, right? You make a GET request for a particular resource. I'd like to see this particular website. You make a post request, maybe you're on some forums, right? And you are typing in a post that you want to make. You hit send. That's going to be generally sending a post request to that server so that I can create your post. Maybe you're updating your post, right? That's generally going to be a put request. And finally, you want to delete your account. You want to delete the post. You're generally going to be sending a delete request to the server. Now, servers, like I said, this is generally, but servers don't have to follow these conventions. These are conventions made by people, developers on the internet, and it makes sense for them for everyone to follow them. But if I wanted to, I can make a server where you log in with a delete request and be completely bananas if I wanted. Okay, so these are the 4 common verbs. Let's take a look at what a request generally looks like, a post request in particular. Okay, so here is a HTTP post request. It looks like this. At the top on that first line where you see post all in caps, that is the verb of the HTTP request we're making. We're making a post request. After the post request, you're going to see the /doc/1/related. That's the resource I'm making the post request to. And then you see HTTP/1.1. That's the version of HTTP I'm using. Okay, that's all in that first line. Below that, you have the HTTP request headers. Right, these are all the essentially the metadata associated with the request. So this is, you see the host. So this is a post request, and it's getting sent to www.test101.com/docs/1/related, right? That would be the whole URL. And then there's some other information about the request. We're saying, okay, we accept this type of data back, right? The language that this user speaks is English, United States. The different encoding schemas that we will accept data in is gzip, right? You have that user agent string that says what browser or what is actually visiting this website so that the server knows how to send stuff back. And then finally, the bottom line where you have that book ID equals and that author equals, that's the body of the request, the actual data we want to send. So since this is an HTTP post request to something called test101.com, I imagine it's to make a book, a post to make a book or something like that. One thing I want to bring your attention to in the body is the way this data is formatted. It's formatted in key value pairs, right? You see book ID equals and author equals, right? So remember, we're doing all that programming for a reason, right? A lot of ways that we can store data that's pretty useful to us as key value pairs. So generally, when you're making post requests, you're going to be sending information kind of like that, right? So maybe if I was making a post, let's take a look at this other post request here. Here we go. Let's say I'm making a post to /books from test101.com. Again, same information is going to be there. You have the host, you have the verb, you have the URI, and you have the version of HTTP that we're using. In the headers, you have all of the metadata associated with it. And then finally, in the body of the post, you have all the stuff, all the data I'm actually trying to send over to the server. So you see here, it says book ID is that, and the author is Corey, and the content of the book is this. You'll notice that this is URL encoded. Right? This is just a way you can encode certain things. Just like we have base64 and we've got hex and we got decimal. URL encoding is one common form of encoding that you'll have, especially over HTTP. And if you look at those URL bars, you'll oftentimes see stuff like this. You'll oftentimes see like %20. That is the character space. Cool. So what do we got here? We have the URI, we have the verb, we have all of the headers, the metadata, and we have the body, the actual data we're trying to send to the server in the post request. Okay, so those are post requests. Let's look at get. It's almost the same. In fact, a little easier, right? Get requests, all they are is for, I would like to read this data. I would like to, whatever resource is there, show me. Now, there's no special way you could send extra data in a GET request because GET requests don't have bodies, right? There's no extra spot for you to put information in there. So big thing. This is a error that when I was teaching web dev, I think that I would have to say like at least like a couple times a cohort. There is no body in a GET request. Get requests are just like small tickets. I'd like this information, please. There's no additional information that the client gets to send inside a get request. Okay. When we're making get requests, servers sometimes need to take into account authorization and authentication. That means, hey, who's making this request and are they allowed to actually get this resource, right? You could imagine Google Sheets, for example, right? You make a request for someone's Google Sheets. Are they allowed to see it? Right? There might have to be some kind of authentication and authorization process before the server responds to those GET requests. But you can also imagine a ton of websites where we don't have that, right? Everyone, it's public for people to see. So if you have a GET request, there are two ways that you can provide additional information. There's no body, but there's two ways you can do it. The two ways are the actual URI parameter. So that's like if you're going to a clothing store and you go to somesite.com/shirts, right? You probably have seen that as you're shopping, right? I'm going to somesite.com. I would like the resource /shirts, everything you've got under /shirts. Now, if you've been particularly observant while you're doing this, sometimes you'll see this question mark and something equals something else. These are called query parameters, and they're one way that you can send a little bit extra information with your GET request. Usually they're for filtering stuff down. So if you go to your favorite, clothes shopping website or something like that and start taking a look at, the different clothes, if you start filtering things down, I almost guarantee you're going to see something like that, where you'll see, yoursite.com/ the type of clothing you're looking for, and then usually some kind of question mark and how you're filtering down, like maybe, color equals blue or something like that. Pay attention next time you're doing a little bit of your shopping, you'll be able to see. So two ways I can send extra information with GET requests. It's the URI parameter and these query parameters. Post requests and put requests, I'm going to use those interchangeably. They're kind of the same. They're requests to create content. So again, you want to make a post on a website, you're probably going to be using a post request. When you are putting in a learn.help ticket, I'm actually not sure now, I want to check, you're probably putting in a post request. So very common, right? Sign up pages, when you're making yourself an account, you're generally going to be sending a post request to the website to, / new account or something like that, /sign up. When you're making forum posts, some bank transactions, if you're posting a new bank transaction, those are usually going to be post requests. Most post requests for most sites should use authorization and some kind of authentication, right? You don't want anyone to be able to post anywhere. I can only think of like one site off the top of my head that's like that. But generally, right, if you're making a post, the server should be sure who you are and that you have the ability to do that. This afternoon, we'll talk about how servers actually do that and log in. Right, the URI is important, right? We're making a post request to a particular resource on the server. And that usually tells you what kind of content you're making. So, maybe you're on Reddit, you make a request to a post request to /r/ cute cats or something like that. And inside that post will have the data that you're trying to send. And as well as it'll have some information for you to actually authenticate and be authorized to make those posts. Okay, most important information for the post requests, it's all in the body. It's all in the body. The body is usually going to be a lot larger than the headers information there. Okay, so again, what does a post look like? Looks like this, right? First line gives you the verb, what resource you're trying to go to, and what version of HTTP we're using. Next, you have some headers, right? The metadata of the request I'm making. And finally, at the bottom, you have the actual data I'm trying to send, the actual data I'm trying to post. That'll all be there. And generally, it'll be in key value pairs. Okay. Verb, headers, body. Okay, I'll add put request here. You'll see that it's very similar to post. The only difference is the people who've built things on the web, we agree that for put, you should usually use that for modifying content. You're going to see it's very common when you log into a web page, you're going to be making a put request, which kind of makes sense. It's like modifying your status from being not logged in to logged in. Kind of makes sense why they do that. But I will tell you, it doesn't have to be that way. Put, again, you should use proper auth and authentication and authorization, right? No one should be able to modify other people's posts. That would be a bad thing, probably, right? And again, same information, almost identical to post requests, right? You can look at the URI, and all of the other important information is going to be included in the body of the request. So wouldn't be complete unless we, told you how to delete, what delete requests look like. They look very similar to all the other ones. The big thing here is they're usually used for deleting content, right? Makes sense. It's in the name. There's usually, but there can be, usually no body for a delete request that says, hey, I would like to delete this resource. Don't need the body for that. And usually they're deleting the resource based on the URI. So you might see like delete, /account/ the actual account number in the URI. And of course, right, no one should be able to delete other people's stuff. So authentication and authorization is like crucial at this part. Okay. So questions on these 4 different types of requests. I know there's a lot of overlap kind of going through them, but now's the time if you have questions for requests, HTTP requests.
Could you go, did you skip the slide for showing what the actual delete request look like?
The delete request looks like, let's see, where's a get request? Hold on, let me find one. Looks like this is a post. No, do I not have one with a get? All right, it looks like this, except get rid of that last line. And instead of it saying post, it says delete.
Okay. Okay.
Up. Yes. Any other questions on them? Look, there's a lot of overlap between them is what I want to show you. All right. Okay, so this is the other side of it. What does the server send you and what does that look like? Okay, it looks very similar for the most part, right? You're gonna have that first line up top that's gonna tell you which version of HTTP we're using. And now it's gonna send you a response code, right? How did the server interpret this request and did everything go okay or not okay, or what happened here? So that's the top line. The next lines are going to be the headers. So any associated metadata along with the request, right? So you see the date, you see what the name of the server is, you see the last time a response was used, last modified, all kinds of associated metadata. And finally, at the bottom of that request, you see, or at that response, you see the HTML. Doesn't have to be HTML, right? HTTP sends text. So it could be HTML, CSS, JavaScript, JSON data, really just kind of any kind of text data that we're trying to send. Cool. So we have a payload body that it actually sends back. Looks very similar. And it is, right? What are we sent? Like, what are we doing? We're doing HTTP in a version, status of how this response went, headers, right? The metadata, and the actual payload or body that we're sending back. Okay, just like there were common verbs that I wanted you to memorize, there's common status codes. You do not have to memorize the status codes. I'll give you an easy way to remember some of them, but for everything else, you could just look them up. Okay, these are the most common ones, but the way I generally think of it is everything that's in the 200 area, like from 200 to 299, that is the server saying everything went okay. So like you see 200 is just okay. 201 means, yes, we created something and it worked. I forget what the other 200s are, but they mean hey, your request was good and the server thinks everything went fine. 300s are different kinds of like redirection sort of status codes. 400s usually means the client did something wrong with the request, and 500s means something went wrong on the server side. So if you're able to memorize that, you're good. Everything else, you can look up the different status codes, and there's a lot of them. There's an arbitrary amount of them. In fact, there's a status code 418 called I'm a teapot. There's actually some history to this. I want to say it was folks over at MIT would ping, would use HTTP protocol to check to see if the coffee was done. And this was one of the response codes that the teapot would send back. I'm a teapot. Useless. Anyway, let's go through the summary. What do I want you to get out of all of this? Well, we're talking mostly about HTTP today. So the new stuff is that HTTP uses verbs, right, to specify the type of request and the type of action that we're trying to do here. I'm either trying to get a resource, I'm trying to create a resource, I'm trying to update a resource, I'm trying to delete a resource. There are other HTTP headers. We're not too interested in them right now. The servers, they have to take that request, interpret it, and do something with it. Okay. The servers are always, it's this part of HTTP. When they send you back a response, they're going to send it with a response code of how the server thinks that it did. If it was a 200 response code, it thinks it did everything fine. If it's 300, it might be some sort of like redirect to a different site, something like that. If it's 400, you did something wrong, right? Like if you ask for a 404 or you get a 404, it's like you're asking for a resource that's not there, right? So that's you on the client side. We don't have anything there. If you get a 500 error, it's like you broke the server somehow. You did something that made it upset and now it's not working. Those are the most common errors. And then we have major types of requests: get, post, put, delete, CRUD, create, read, update, delete. Cool. Cool. So let's stop there. Up there. Stop there.